Hey everybody, welcome back to HPC Tech Shorts, where every week we take you to the water cooler here in AWS and get you to listen to some interesting discussions that we have with the engineers, the architects, and the geeks who are making the cloud a better place for your HPC workloads. So this week, I'm happy to be joined again by Steve Kendrex in Seattle. Hey, Steve.
Hello, how's it going?
Pretty cool. Steve is our principal product manager for AWS Batch. And so, Steve, your job when you wake up every morning is to try and figure out how to make the world a better place with Batch, right?
Yep. So for all our customers, yeah, I do some work with all of the HPC stuff that we do generally. But yeah, obviously, most of the day I work on Batch and try and make that the best product it can be for our customers here.
Yeah, cool. So Steve works with the engineering, with the actual engineering teams day to day who are building the product. Steve looks after the roadmap. There's a lot of work involved. Now, one of the things that you brought out last year in AWS Batch was, at reInvent, in fact, was Fargate as a compute destination for the workloads. So that took Batch beyond just scaling workloads on EC2. It took it into Fargate. Can you talk a bit more about that? And I guess also, in a broader picture to zoom out, people should keep their eye on this space because, of course, we're constantly evaluating new features for Batch, and we might keep adding some more backends as well.
Yeah, we kind of view serverless computing has been around for a little while, but not really something that I would say in the HPC space is commonplace. And we thought we had an opportunity to give customers something that is incredibly useful, that especially for things like web services and applications have really been successful and really enabled customers to offload a lot of that work for infrastructure management to AWS into services. But for batch type workloads, it's not really something that had been taken a really hard look at by the community. And part of the reason for that is because things like with the serverless application, it's a little bit more challenging to orchestrate. It can be difficult to submit jobs and get jobs up and running necessarily in terms of like actually having that workload get submitted to the compute. Once the compute's there, it's easy. It's super easy to run in terms of the actual compute running. But there's some unique challenges to the serverless space that we thought that Batch could answer and make it accessible for Batch workloads.
Right. So one of the things that I like about AWS Batch versus things like traditional clusters, like say Parallel Cluster, is that Batch is a pilot light. It's a pilot light with a queue that's always running at no cost. Right. You set up your queue in in Batch, and it's just ready to accept jobs when you are ready to send them, and you don't have to pay for any infrastructure that's constantly running. And then Batch goes and creates the infrastructure, if you allow it to. It goes and builds the infrastructure as needed to do that. Like you say, sometimes the kind of the workflow cycles that people are working on, you might have a short job to get done in Batch, but if you don't have the infrastructure laying around, you have to wait some time for it to spin up, which is that problem that Fargate really solves.
Yeah, and it's especially useful for, hey, I just have a few dozen jobs and I really do not want to care about how these things run because, the return on the amount of work it takes to get something set up just to run these few dozen jobs or a few hundred jobs even, it is just not there, right? So how do I just get these things to run as easily as possible? That's kind of where we're going for with Fargate. And over in the fullness of time, as Fargate continues to expand as a compute concept, we're going to see that absorb more and more, right? So, it's going to move from a few hundred jobs to thousands of jobs to hundreds of thousands of jobs over time. We're going to be seeing a lot more different types of compute. Right now, we're definitely thinking about it for the simple, I just need to offload and I just need these things to get running quickly so that I can just get my result back and continue on my work.
And this is for the cases where quick is important. If your optimization, if your specific optimization that you need to do is to choose the right CPU because you've got a floating point algorithm that requires, Intel's AVX 512 in order to work really well and be performant, then keep using batch on EC2 because that gives you all of the control you need. But batch on Fargate means you can get your jobs run now without any of the waiting at all, because Fargate has a fleet of capacity always on, always ready. So far so good. I think we need to put some skin on the bone by getting you to show us how all this works.
Yeah, sure. And you can see my screen, right?
So I'm adding it. There we go. There's your screen.
Perfect. All right, so I'm just going to walk through the console here, and I'll show you how we, how we think about things from batch, and I'll show you how to choose the specific options. The reason, again, console, of course, AWS Batch has a fully featured CLI, but I just want to show you this because it's a little bit easier to understand some of the choices and the options that you have. So we're going to go click here into batch. This is just my account here. We're going to show you so I've got a whole bunch of different things. This is the AWS Batch Dashboard. On the left here, we have, how this is just the overview of my current environment. As you can see, nothing is running. There's no CPUs being spun up anywhere. And on the left, we can show you how to, you can click into different things. So with AWS Batch, the key things that you need to create how batch works is that we have a job and a job definition, right? That's just the application image and a config in a Docker container. And you have the role that's attached to that. You have previously, you can go in and create a job queue and a compute environment. And all that compute environment is just a place for your resources to live. So with Fargate, we just have a Fargate compute environment. That's really the only config you need to do. And then as jobs come into the batch scheduler, or to the job queue, the batch scheduler makes choices about which jobs run on what sort of compute. Obviously with Fargate, there's no real hard choice that needs to be made there. Everything just runs on a right-sized compute, right? So every job gets the exact amount of CPU and memory that it requires. So I'm going to go in here. I'm just going to create all of these artifacts just to show you how to do it really quick, and we'll submit a job and get it running. And you'll see just from the time, even with me talking through, how easy it is to just get set up and some running and some workloads running. So I'm going to go and create a compute environment, and you'll see here you can do a managed or unmanaged compute environment. Managed, of course, I would recommend. That's the point, especially for something like Fargate, where there's no really compute to manage at all. So we're going to talk about
unmanaged. For everybody else who's watching, an unmanaged compute environment is one where you, the owner of the AWS account, are going to manage the fleet yourself and provide it to batch. Which Correct. You might want to do if you've got really specific ideas about how you want that fleet managed.
Yep, that's true. Generally, we recommend that you use managed. We have built out our own cloud native scaling mechanism, so we tend to think that we do a pretty good job there. But of course, some customers do like that control. The other thing, by the way, and we can talk about this in a later edition of Tech Shorts, is if you want to use ECS anywhere, you need to use it unmanaged because all of those hosts maybe on your on-premise cluster need to be yours, and you need to add them.
Oh yeah, right. Of course.
Okay, so we're gonna
switch back to batch. Switch batch to manage the top. Yep.
Yep. Oh, sorry. Good call out there. We're going to create. Batch automatically creates what we call service link roles that contains all the permissions that are necessary to run jobs through the resources that we have, and what those are listed out in our documentation. We'll create that for you if you want. You can also create your own role, but generally speaking, we just recommend using a service role, and that's just enabled by default here. All right. So now we have here a choice. Our first real choice to make between which compute type we're going to use. We're already talking about how we've already decided to use Fargate for this workload, for this demonstration. But obviously, we have here is on demand, EC2 on demand, and Spot. But
of course,
we have we have a choice between Fargate and Fargate Spot. Fargate Spot works very similarly to how EC2 Spot works, which is interruptible, but it gives you a significant discount, so up to 70% off the Fargate price to run your jobs on Fargate Spot. So we can select that. Today, we're just going to go ahead and select Fargate just for demonstration purposes. Yeah. With Fargate, one of the things that it does is it simplifies a lot of things, right? So If I were to click into on demand, there's a few more mechanisms that I would need to check here, a few more things to do because that are specific to the EC2 instances. With Fargate, there's no need to really worry about configuring instances. Again, all of these exist as serverless compute, right? That Batch is submitting to for you. So, but at the same time, it doesn't mean we want to go crazy with it. We still want to control. Maybe we still have costs. We still want to control how much is running at the same time. So I'm going to set a maximum vCPU here, and we'll just call this 256 maximum CPUs, right? That just means that for whatever reason, we can't have more than 256 vCPUs all running in that compute environment at the same time.
Everything's got to have a limit.
Exactly. Yes. Yep. And of course, if we wanted to, this could be much larger or something like that. But we're just gonna constrain it for demo purposes. VCP or VPC, are selected for you by default. If you really need to constrain, you can. Of course, we have the option here, but we've just gone ahead and selected. We select these by default for you. If you have additional settings here, you can do that, but we're not going to select any of those, and we're not going to have a tag right now. But you can tag. So we're just going to go ahead and create this compute environment. Here we go. We've got it right here. It's text short, so you see how it's Fargate. There's no instance types in here, obviously. And then there's no minimum or desired CPUs because from your perspective and the customer, those don't really exist, right? The only thing that we have in here is this cap on CPUs that Batch will enforce.
Right.
All right. We're going to create a job queue. We're going to call it text shorter. We'll give it a priority. We'll just give it the
priority one. There's nothing more important than the text short, Steve.
Oh, well, then if it's priority 1, then it needs to be 1000. That's the highest. Yes. Additional configuration here, right? Just enabled. It's and then we can add a tag. I'm not going to add a tag right now, and that's it. So we're just going to go ahead and select it and find the text short one that we just found, and there we go. So now I've hooked up my job queue, and there you go. We essentially have a compute
environment so that we know that the job queue actually knows where to deploy the workloads. Got it.
That's exactly right. And now, as of this time, right, you already have a serverless queue and compute environment system set up, right? Just as easy as that. So now to actually submit work, we have to do things. One, we have to create a job definition, and all that is just a template that you can refer back to at a later time when you're submitting jobs. So a job definition is stored by Batch. You don't have to maintain it. It's just stored, and if you want to update it, it's updated by Batch, or you can just update it and Batch will keep the update for you. And then later on, we're going to refer back to this job definition when we actually submit the job. So short hello. So we're gonna name it. We're gonna call this out as Fargate. This is important for validation purposes. Some capabilities are not some capabilities in EC2, as you explained before. In the job and its requests are not going to work in Fargate because of the way it is.
Sure.
There are some capabilities that EC2 as Fargate doesn't have, right? So we're going to validate this, and just really all this does at this point is just say, hey, Batch, check and make sure that this can actually run on Fargate. And we constrain kind of the available things for you to make it easy for you to know what
entire part of the HPC industry that would be revolutionized if we could spread that kind of functionality everywhere else. So.
We're gonna give it 10 retry attempts just because. If we want to, we can do certain cool things, like we can evaluate what happens on exit, right? If I want to say, hey, we're going to for example, on a certain fail, retry the job or don't retry. On a certain status reason, retry or don't retry. We're not going to include that right now, but that's where we are.
Hello world.
All right,
there we go. The canonical.
Yep. Well, we're going to do hello oofla.
Nice.
And
feel special.
And do it there. So because why not? I
feel special already. I really do.
Yep. The execution timeout, I generally recommend to set an execution timeout. You never know, right? And it just makes sense to have a timeout. So let's make this 1,000 seconds. and and that just means that batch will kill the job after 1,000 seconds if it hasn't exited. Right, your container image, right? We're just going to pull out the Docker Hub container image here for Amazon Linux. Yep. Okay, so we got hello world. We're going to give it, why not? Let's do some fractional CPUs here, and we'll give it 2 gigs of memory. Batch again is automatically going to populate these for you if you haven't set up your task execution role. This is something that we need for Fargate to work.
What are the other options for memory there? How much memory can we go to?
So we can go to 0.5, I believe. So this makes it a little easier to see if you have more. Right. So yeah, we can go up to 16 gigs. Obviously for like the fractional.
Let me just say that's almost enough to run Emacs. So that'll make some of the HPC folks happy. There's my snark for the day.
How about that?
There you go. We could run Emacs in this now.
Let's do 4 vCPUs in memory. Why not? Like let's show what it can do. One of the things here is important is enable public IP here if your job needs outbound network. So we're going to go ahead and say yes, it does. And then the Fargate platform version is just given to you by default here in the console. So we're just going to do 1.4. Okay, additional configuration here if you want, right? A job role, a specific job role. So if you need access to additional services, we can add. You need to add that in if you want, or if it's not included already in your current role set. If you want to add EFS or something, you can add these in here with.
And we had a blog post about that a few weeks ago. So that's an interesting topic for a lot of folks. Yep.
You can do that. Okay, some security things in here as well, but I'm not going to get through every single one of these options. If you want to use a different log driver, secrets, that sort of thing. Okay, so one thing I do want to talk about though is tags. So with Fargate, because every compute resource, as I started to mention earlier, every compute resource is different, right? Every task gets its individual compute resource. So with tags, if you tag an AWS batch job, it will get assigned against that compute resource, and that compute resource will emit metrics and cost information in tags. So if you want fine-grained cost control or cost allocation for each job that you have as you tag it, if you add a tag with batch, you can get that in Fargate. We don't have that capability in EC2 right now, but we do have it in Fargate, and that's something that often some customers may say, hey, I'm just going to run these jobs to see how they're doing to get that fine access, that fine visibility. You can do that in Fargate.
Cost allocation tags. That's really cool. That's a really interesting way of actually being able to monitor your costs. That's a good idea.
Yep. And I wouldn't say, if you do want to see how a single job's performance is, why not run that job, give it a one-off in Fargate and see how it goes if it can use Fargate.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to create this. Okay. So we've got the job definition set up, and now we're literally just going to go submit the job. Let's do this. So the only real difference here is we're going to call this tech shortest, and we'll go find this. We're going to refer back to tech short hello. I select the job queue that job runs in. So here we go. And execution timeout again. If I want to override, I have certain overrides that I can implement here.
But
and then we have the options here of the job type. So I can say a single job, we're going to run array. Multi-node is not available in Fargate for your tightly coupled workloads. We can't run those in Fargate at this point, but we can run arrays. So I'm going to run a array of 100, and I won't get these set up. And obviously, you see everything in here is already pre-configured as we have it. If I want to overwrite these, I can. We're not going to. And there we go. So we're going to submit these. I just double check everything here. All right. So we're going to submit these. All right. So the jobs are submitted. We're going to go into the dashboard and see how things are going. So we've already got it in here. We've got our highest priority queue. That is our tech shorter queue. The jobs in here are in pending. We're going to click in here, and the and see exactly how things are going. So as you can see, we've already have 31 starting jobs running, or two jobs running, 31 jobs starting, 67 are runnable, and that just is a implementation of there's only so fast we can submit work to Fargate, and Batch manages that submission for you.
Well, especially when all of these jobs are like frankly, Echo Hello World is going to be a fraction of a second to run. So,
Yep. Or, well, don't forget, it's not Hello World, it's Hello Buffalo. Yeah, as you can see, these jobs are already starting to like succeed.
There you go.
So, and then, so as you can see, we can have this, we have the logs here of how these jobs are running. The total runtime here is really just there does take some time for that Fargate resource to spin up. It's faster than EC2, but there is, as you can see here, you're right. Like it should only take a fraction of a second to run, but there will be some spin up time. And if you want to, you can say, okay, I'm going to go in here and find the log stream, and you'll be able to say, oh yeah, okay, this, it said hello Buffalo.
Rock on.
So there we go. Oh, here you go. We can click in. Oh, wait. It's going to open up a separate tab. It's not that important. Just imagine that I opened up a separate tab where you are seeing something that says hello Buffalo.
So that's really cool. So that was actually, that was super fast. We did all of that in like 15 minutes.
Yep. And you can see here that this is probably still just churning through the very final jobs that are running. But yeah, in terms of like actually, and by the time there's just one job left. By the time, I talked through a lot of those options. If you know what you're, doing, it really could only take a few minutes and you've got stuff running.
And the cool thing about using Fargate is the number of choices that you had to make just collapsed dramatically. You don't have to wait more than, 10 seconds or something for the infrastructure to be available to actually get your jobs running.
Exactly.
You're off to the races really quick. So this could be something that people could embed in other serverless workloads and workflows, where some data arrived from a remote office. We need to trigger a batch job on that to compute something that gives us an answer and gives us some insight into what our business is doing today, right? And that could be a really important, scientifically interesting workload. It could be the payroll database. Any number of different use cases here, right?
Yep. Yeah, for sure. Right. Anything that fits within the Fargate concurrency limitations, of course. Right. Don't try and submit 100,000 jobs all at the same time. But for sure, there could be literally anything. I do want to demonstrate here what we were talking about before. Right. If you see here, each of these jobs take about 20-ish seconds. Right. 23, I think, seconds is what we're looking at. 24 seconds. The reason for that, again, as I mentioned, is every job is getting its own compute resource. So it's much faster for individual jobs because every job only takes 20 to 30 seconds, especially if your job runs for like 4 minutes, right? That 20 to 30 seconds doesn't look very extreme. In EC2, it can take 2 to 3 minutes just to get a machine because it has to get provisioned, the AMI has to load, all that sort of stuff. The container has to download. And so you're paying a high cost up front. The difference being, though, in EC2, once that 2 to 3 minute cost is paid, any new job that comes in just reuses very quickly that same container that's already been downloaded to that instance, and so the startup time is a few seconds. And so over time in EC2, if you're just running the same job, the cost goes down. So the average over time starts to become pushed into EC2's favor, whereas for Fargate, it's much more heavily weighted on an initial spin up. You don't have to wait. So that is an interesting trade-off, and it just depends on the workload.
And again, it just depends on what you're trying to optimize for as to which of these two compute destinations you'd want to choose. Okay, that makes a whole lot of sense. So look, I'm going to put the URL up. I'm just showing the web page where you can actually get more information. If you head to this page, to get, which is the batch landing page on the AWS website, and you click on features, you get down to this section where it starts to talk about batch with Fargate. If folks out there are watching have got ideas about future tech shorts and different topics you want to see us cover, if you've got feature ideas for batch that you really want to discuss with us, find us on Twitter. Our DMs are open. We'd love to have a chat with you. and we'd love to get your ideas for future tech shorts and put them into the hopper. Steve, thanks for coming along today and getting up early this morning in Seattle.
All right. Thank you very much for having me.
See you soon.